Genesis 6 might be the most understood passage in the Bible. Because if you take it at face value, it sounds like angels had children with humans. But there's one problem. That would break everything Scripture teaches about creation and the order God designed. So what is really happening here? Welcome back to the Quiet Catechist, where history and theology meet. Genesis 6 gives us one of the strangest passages in Scripture in only 4 verses. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them, these were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." Then the world collapses into violence. But before we can dig into this, we must first begin with exploring certain principles that frame these verses. The idea that fallen angels physically slept with women comes largely from Second Temple Jewish literature, especially First Enoch. It is ancient, but it is not dogma. In fact, in most churches, it's not even canon. The church has always taught that angels were pure spirits. They are immaterial intelligences. They do not possess biological systems, and they do not reproduce. Even Augustine the Hippo argued strongly against literal angelic procreation. Angels can appear bodily, they can assume visible form, but manifestation is not incarnation, and it is certainly not biology. So, in Genesis 1, God establishes order. Each creature reproduces according to its kind. I'll say that again. Genesis 1 says each creature reproduces according to its kind. Reproduction requires shared nature. A human and an angel do not share biological nature any more than a dog and a fish do. They are not simply different species. One is material, the other is purely spiritual. Under God's created order, spirit and flesh do not combine genetically. So if Genesis 6 is not describing angelic DNA mixing with human DNA, what is it describing? Looking back at the text, Genesis 6, 1 through 4, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took wives for themselves. The Nephilim were on the earth in these days. These were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. Notice what the text does not do. It does not explain the mechanics. It does not describe biology. It does not dwell on the event. It moves quickly, and immediately afterward, we read, "The earth was filled with violence." That is the emphasis. In the Old Testament, sons of God can refer to heavenly beings. We see this clearly in the book of Job, where the sons of God present themselves before the Lord. So the language is spiritual, but the action may not be biological. Historically, there are 2 main Christian interpretations. First, the Sethite View, where the sons of God are the righteous line of Seth intermarrying with Cain's line. And the second, the Divine Council View, where the sons of God are spiritual beings whose rebellion influenced human corruption. Both interpretations agree. Genesis 6 is about the collapse of order. Here is a theological theory very carefully framed. Some modern Orthodox scholars, including modern discussions on podcasts such as The Lord of Spirits, suggest that Genesis 6 may confront ancient ritualized rebellion. In the ancient Near East and Mediterranean world, kings did not merely rule politically, they ruled theologically. In ancient Greece, some rulers were called sons of Zeus. Sacred rites and divine descent myths legitimized a leader's authority. Temple rituals were believed to invite a deity's presence, enthroning the ruler as a deity's earthly embodiment. The king did not simply govern, he became their god's agent. Spiritual presence was invoked through a ritual, and power was enthroned. Genesis 6 may be polemicizing against such practices. Not angels reproducing, not fantasy hybrid monsters, but human rulers aligned with rebellious spiritual powers through ritual. Not romance, not allegiance, through demonic spiritual possession. Some scholars even explain this further. The human ruler performs a ritual to invoke a rebellious spiritual power. Through the ritual, he becomes demonically possessed, enthroned by the spirit, and aligned with forces contrary to God's order. Within that ritualized state, sexual unions occur, not between angel and woman, but between the possessed ruler and the human woman. The children are biologically human, but conceived within a spiritually corrupted system. In this view, the Nephilim are dynasties of mighty men shaped by ritual spiritual rebellion. Genesis does not glorify these acts, it moves immediately to the result. The earth was filled with violence. Now, we must be clear here. These are scholarly theological proposals, not church teaching. We must remember that angels are pure spirits and cannot biologically reproduce. Human conception requires human nature, and any interpretation must respect that metaphysical reality. The word Nephilim likely means fallen or those who cause others to fall. They're described as mighty men and men of renown, language of warrior kings. Genesis 6 does not glorify them, it moves towards judgment. Genesis says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When Israel enters Canaan, they encounter giants. And then we meet Og, king of Bashan, the last of the Rephaim. His enormous bed is recorded in Deuteronomy and serves as a memorial of lingering rebellion. Where Bashan becomes symbolically associated with hostile spiritual powers, Og represents the lingering ideology of corrupted divine kingship. Israel's conquest is theological, not merely territorial. Dismantling systems that claim divine legitimacy through spiritual compromise. This interpretation preserves orthodox angelology, avoids biological impossibility, and accounts for historical religious practices, and explains why the Nephilim are described as mighty and violent. Genesis becomes a critique of pagan sacred kingship. That divine sonship cannot be seized through ritual. It must be given by God. In Genesis 6, rulers seek divine sonship through ritual and possession. In the gospel, the true Son of God becomes man through incarnation, not manipulation. Where corrupted rulers enthroned spirits, Christ cast them out. Where they filled the earth with violence and bloodshed, Christ sheds his own blood for humanity. Og falls, giants fade, and at the cross, rebellious powers are disarmed. Genesis 6 is not about monsters, it is about this. When humanity tries to claim divinity apart from God, it invites corruption. Power without obedience becomes violence. Worship shapes authority. Corrupted worship corrupts the world. And in Christ, heaven and earth are united, not through rebellion, but through obedience. This has been the Quiet Catechist, where history and theology meet. Until next time, keep the faith and keep learning.